Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Hope you're having a fabulous week and your tanks are, I don't even have a silly little comment. I always have something, but it's never good. Swimmingly wonderful. I don't know. Anyways, hope you're doing great. I'm sipping on some Chardonnay. Let me know in the comment section what you're sipping on. If you're on Instagram, don't forget that you'll see us very funnily because of the aspect ratio. If you jump on over to YouTube and search Seahorse Whisperer, you'll see the full video and be able to interact with us. But feel free to just watch or listen, I guess, on Instagram. Anyhow, Kevin, thank you so much. I always forget to tell you guys, if we have a special guest that really knocks your socks off and teaches you something, or if our conversation is ever something that really helped you or whatnot, there is the option to super chat. And Kevin, I thank you for your super chat. What a super chat is you actually you're basically like saying you guys telling, I'm tongue tied already, telling us that we did a good job on that night by giving $1, $5, whatever. Kevin gave 10. Thank you. And I do want to call out when people do that. I don't expect it, but it does help the channel, obviously. So if you have a good week, if we have a good week and you enjoy it, don't forget to super chat, like, and subscribe. All right, now I did all my shout outs. I started a part-time job this week, guys, so I have nothing for you. I'm so sorry. No plan for tonight. I am still working on everything that we have coming up. Ask Seahorse Source Part 4. We want to talk a little bit more about Ray's idea for the testing tonight. And, my 2 males and 1 female tank. We'll talk about that later soon, too. But hi, Vincent. Hi, Shyla. Hi, Seahorse Corner. So basically what I'm saying is tonight is open chat. I'm tired, so I'm willing to chat about whatever you guys want, but I didn't have a big plan. So ask questions, or if you guys want us to talk about something, feel free. The reason we were late tonight, for once, was not completely my fault. We got to chit-chatting about politics, and I thought, no, we're not going to do that live because that would be a mistake. So sorry we were late again. I'm working on that too. But I do have Ray, Holly, and Cheryl with me tonight again. Here to chat about seahorses and anything else you guys want. Anybody in the last comment, anybody in the audience, like Vincent or anybody, if you ever want to jump in on an open chat night because you want to share something or have something, I never want to put you guys on the spot, but you're always welcome to use that link. It stays the same every week. All right, now I'm going to stop rambling. Holly, you had an announcement, right?
Candy just turned 3
Yes.
yesterday, so she's my second oldest and the mother of all the babies.
Nice. And good job taking care of her. 3 years old. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How old, what was the oldest you ever had, Cheryl? Seahorse, I mean.
I want to say they ranged between about 9 and 12 years. But I mean, that was after 15 plus years of work that I got to the point that I was able to do that. It didn't happen overnight. And it's one of those things where sometimes when they start getting that old, they get kind of grumpy.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like somebody posted earlier and I answered, well, don't expect a whole lot out of that male in terms of size of fry until he's, getting up close to 5 years of age, because that's when they start really maxing out and doing great. But by the time they get to 9 or 10, they're pretty much kicking back and going, I'll get to it manana. They just don't work fast, but they're still cool to watch even when they get older.
Exactly. I mean, heck, if you don't want fry, the older ones are better. Hey, Chris, Carrie, I see you out there. Hey, Sen Ginger. Still hoping you'll jump in one day. And Chris, I need to talk to you on the side again, but hope you're doing fantastic and jump in anytime you can or want to. Ray, your current seahorse is what? You said 6, 7?
He's 7 next month.
7. And is he still doing okay?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not, but he's doing okay.
Right?
They seem to develop more personality as they get older, I've noticed. Like Candy has become so interactive.
Really?
Yeah. It's the Ginger just said, is there an age seahorses live in a beginner tank? as
Yep.
awful as that sounds. Well, it depends on the keeper. It depends on the tank. There's so many variables.
Mhm.
And I can say after all the years I've worked with seahorses, I do nothing the same that I did when I first started. And I have much better success now than I used to have. But I still occasionally run into that young male that's hiding behind the rocks, manages to get pregnant with a female that he was hiding with behind the rocks. And they produce little bitty fry that are very, very difficult to raise, as opposed to an older pair that produces some nice big fry.
Sure. And you guys know Cheryl's always her answer always is gonna lean towards fry because she is
Yeah.
the mama. She is the mama of seahorses. That's it. She is the mama. All right. If you want to know fry or breeding, that is Cheryl is the one. We need to have an episode on breeding. Just
Well,
focus specifically.
it's one of those things. I started years ago, and I failed miserably the first
Sure.
couple of years. And the first time I actually had real success, uh, I would want to say it was around 2007, and I had some really nice, big, beautiful fry that came out of a male that I got from Draco Marine, and out of a female that I raised myself. And I woke up. Well, I didn't wake up. I stayed up all night because a tree came down and took out my power.
Right.
So I had no power. It was in the 20s. The fry tank got down into the low 40s, and they were all laying on the bottom,
Yep.
just laying there. They weren't moving, and I thought they were all dead. And I went into my paramedic mode and started doing gradual rewarming with a heating pad on the bottom and stuff. And all of a sudden, they started lifting their little heads, and they started swimming up higher where it was colder, and they go darting back down. And after several days of gradual rewarming, I didn't lose a single one of them.
That's so cool. I love that story. And I would say, Zen Ginger, I would say the average age of a seahorse in a beginner's tank. As a beginner, I kept my first pair my first. Okay, let me actually. I tell the story differently sometimes because I always forget. I did get a pair of wild caught Hystrix when I very first decided to do seahorses. That didn't go very well and didn't last very long because I was a beginner. I didn't know any of these people and they were wild caught. So didn't go well. Can't even remember how long they lasted, but it wasn't long enough. But then when I switched over to captive bred erectus, my first 4 captive bred erectus, I did lose one male to pouch emphysema that just never went away, and he ended up not living long enough. He didn't die from it, but he didn't live long enough. But the other 3, 2 of them ended up my main breeders for a good 6 years. And that was my very first pair of erectus. I mean, and for, I would say, 9 years, but they only bred. And that's a good question. Ray, let me go to you. What is there a typical age that seahorses stop breeding? Or does it just depend on the seahorse?
I think partially it may depend on the species, but it'll depend on the individuals more than even species. It's like dwarfs. I found that dwarfs will stop breeding before they get near their end, and they don't live long to begin with.
Right.
And the first time when I was keeping them, I was selling off the fry, not realizing that they're going to stop. The adults that I had were going to stop producing.
Oh, geez.
And I had to get more to
keep it going.
Production going again.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, and I'm so glad you said that, Ray, because that's a great point. I always give an answer, and I don't think about the fact that it does absolutely depend on the species. I would say dwarf seahorses live about 2 years.
2 years is
I
a
would
long
say
time for them, I think. I think that's
1 to 2 years. But what's really cool,
average is probably a year and a half, year and 3/4.
but what's really
If
cool,
I could interject here.
hang on, Cheryl, let me finish and then I'll let you talk.
Okay.
What's really, really cool here, though, is you have to remember that all the science, if you go on, any of the scientific documentation, it tells you that seahorses in the wild only live a year or 2. And that's just not true for the larger species. In captivity,
They've got predation in the wild.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have
Yeah.
predation.
different story for them.
So my point is, when you buy captive bred seahorses and take care of them properly, you're keeping them alive a lot longer than they would be in the ocean even. I shouldn't say that, but
I've heard it said
Um,
for Erectus, like 5 to 7 years is a good run for somebody that's new to
yep.
keeping them, I think. I've heard that said.
But it's good. It's
I'm
it's a
going to give
great,
you an example. I'm going to give you an example real quick when you talk about dwarf seahorses. A
yeah.
friend of mine who I knew for years on seahorse.org set up a 40-gallon tank with a sump. She
Mm-hmm.
set it up, filled it full of copepods. I mean, was doing massive copepod production. And then she put in the dwarf seahorses. They were producing 15 to 18 fry in each brood.
Wow.
And I don't even remember anymore. It was at least, they lived for at least 5 years in that system.
Wow.
But it
Because
was
it
one
was
of the,
such a good system.
yeah, she specifically designed it for dwarfs.
Gotcha.
And it was one of those things where everybody was sitting there, and she'd show pictures of her males, and they would have these huge pouches, and they were all over the place, feeding constantly. But she gave them an optimal environment, and that makes a
Well, you
huge
need
difference.
to, on the side, Cheryl, you should tell me, we should have her come on Wine Wednesday and share her optimal dwarf setup, because I've never heard of dwarfs sitting or living for 5 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but great question, because I need to remember in the future to say that caveat that we're talking about the Erectus reed-icuta larger species, not the dwarfs, because the dwarfs are a completely different cup of tea, is my
Well,
my opinion. But Holly, did you said 5 to 7 years? What's the
That's what
longest
I that's what I've heard.
and you said, is Candy your oldest?
No, Dandy is the oldest, believe it or not. He's my handicapped seahorse,
Right.
and he'll be 4 years old soon. He's the oldest.
Well, I miss my big purple male. It was the very first Erectus I ever got, and he got to. I swear he was 12 inches. I swear. And that's
Mhm.
another good. The reason this is another good question is because people don't realize that they will last longer than some of the other fish that you might keep. They will live. They will get big. That's why in one of my videos I talk about the fact that people don't understand why we say you need so much water volume for a pair of seahorses and a sump and all this equipment. And it is, of course, because of the organics and because they're more prone to illness because of the gulp system and all that. But it's also that they get big and they have they want their spaces where they, like my seahorses have their places that they sleep. They,
Yes.
that's their place.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes in their place. That's it.
yeah,
And hey, Mystery Snail Gardens,
it's
nailed it.
one of those
Love it.
things. Yeah, it depends on the seahorses. I picked up a wild caught pair of tiger tail seahorses, hippocampus combs, back in about 1907.
Mm-hmm.
They were both emaciated. They were in terrible condition. I spent over 6 months treating them for everything under the sun,
Yep.
and they finally turned around. They lived for another 9 years in my tanks and continued to reproduce almost constantly to the point that I was getting overrun. And it was just one of those things where I got lucky with this pair.
Yep.
Uh,
And
I
you knew
mean,
what you were doing, though, too. And what we talk about all the time is setting up for them properly is so important. So great questions then, Ginger. And I would say, I already asked you last week, but we hope that you or any new person will come in and join us in the video and ask one-on-one questions, because it is kind of hard. Like when someone says, what's the ideal tank for seahorses? It depends on the species. It depends on your capabilities. It depends on your house or apartment. It depends on, a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want state of the art, or do you like to do? So there's so many ways to be successful. It's just the basics are covered in Seahorse Sources Group under the file section, 30-gallon minimum per pair. This, that, and the other is all covered there. But we love the questions here, and we love to chat about them. Okay, go ahead, Cheryl.
It was like my wild caught pair of combs that I ended up with for many, many years and raised a lot of pride from them. But it was one of those things where their first tank was a 29-gallon quarantine with a 20-gallon sump. They ultimately got moved into a 58-gallon with a 29-gallon sump, and that was their home for the remainder of their lives. But they went through, I went through deworming, I went through all kinds of gyrations, treating them to bring them back to health. But this is a pair that I literally would jump out of bed every morning before dawn and go running in to see if they were still alive.
Well, and that's the reason that we say buy captive bred. Buy captive bred. You won't have to go through all of that, because
exactly
the treatment for wild caught is huge. Deworming, everything she just talked about. It takes months. It's crazy. We'll leave that to the commercial breeders, and then the commercial breeders can, make sure that they have healthy, great stock, and we get the captive bred, and it's so much easier for us, right? Yeah. Kevin wanted to know if K1 Media adds to the success of.
Yes.
Okay, why?
Because it basically, K1 Media is designed to remove nitrites, and basically it helps keep your tank cleaner. It is also self-cleaning because it's in continuous motion and it's bumping against each other. So it's anything that's dying is being removed off of the media and helping keep the media clean. Now that crap is going to be going into your tank, which means you have to do water changes. Mm-hmm. And that's another key where I think a lot of people fall short, is they think, oh, it's only been 2 weeks or whatever. But you have to maintain, you're holding them in a limited environment where there's really no place for dissolved organics, etc., to go. So it's up to you to keep that tank clean.
Yep, and I would say, okay, my answer to that is I don't know. It's been great in my 40-gallon all-in-one, but you can never say this was the answer. This was the thing that made the Seahorse tank successful. Because again, real quick, I promise Holly you're next, but in the 40-gallon all-in-one, I'm having to do more maintenance work, even though I have the K1 and such, because it's less water volume. So if you're willing to do a bigger system with more water volume, bigger skimmer, all that, maybe you don't need the K1. I do want to mention, though, that the K1 actually, it can work as the complete biological filter. It does handle ammonia, nitrite, and nitrates. It's not just nitrates. And as Cheryl described, the reason it's so effective in water plants. I mean, we stole it from the water cleaning industry, and it because it bumps against each other, is in continual motion. Well, she already said it. I won't repeat it, but it's just it's very, hang on. It's very effective. But I will say, if you weren't here last week, I talked about the fact that I have problems in my house with pumps, right? Air pumps. And that my K1 Media hadn't been tumbling for a couple of days, probably because I'm lazy and I hadn't checked it. And my tank was all cloudy. I had also not replaced any of the char in the Robert King char chamber. So that could have been it too. Sometimes you just never know what it is. But I got the K1 Media tumbling. I removed and added a little bit more char to the RC. Is it RK? RC? Anyways, the chamber, and my tank's clear as a whistle. But I mean, I like the K1. Holly, you go ahead. Sorry, you've been waiting to talk.
So what K1 does is give you more biofilter surface in a smaller space.
Yeah.
What they are is they're tiny little plastic cylinder things. They have a lot of surface, but they're really tiny. And that gives more surface for bacteria to grow in a smaller space in your sump. So when you have them tumbling, that's the self-cleaning people are talking about. So the way I have mine, it's in a 2-liter bottle with holes in it and an air line running into it. It's sitting inside the sump. So that air line forces them to tumble around and around and around. And like Cheryl said, it knocks all the stuff off of it, so that's not just sitting there, it's in constant motion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's a good
Cleaning.
way to get a lot of surface area in a smaller space, is why people
Yeah.
use it.
It's
Like that.
designed to basically convert nitrites to nitrates.
It
And that's-
actually does all three, Cheryl. It does. But go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, it's just to me it's like any other biomedia, but it's like it's giving you so much more surface for the good bacteria than you
Mhm.
get in other types of media.
Right, just like the RK char chambers using the bubbling motion to clean it so that more can come in. It's kind of the same thing. But Ray, you said what? What was your answer?
For what?
He's talking to everybody else.
About K1. I think he was
K1.
saying he's only
Well, you
used.
know I don't use it. I don't use
I
anything that
know.
all you modern people use.
Mhm.
Well,
I'm old and I'm old fashioned.
but I wanted you to say that live because people need to know you don't have to have it.
You don't
None
have
of
to
this.
have it. It's a choice,
would
just
say-
like so many other things. There's no
Yeah, I
real
would
way that you have to keep seahorses. There's a lot of different ways, and it comes down to finding out what works best for you and your
Yeah.
budget. Like if you can afford to have a lot of equipment and spend a lot of money on high-tech stuff and testing and everything, go for it. For me, I'm a tightwad, and
Type one.
well, I've got money. I'm not spending it.
Yeah.
I got you, but real quick, I'm curious. What would you say? Because we talked about K1, we've talked about the RK char chamber. What would you say is the one if you set up a seahorse tank, and as Ray just said, you could literally keep seahorse. I mean, I have kept younger seahorses in a small tank where I just had to do constant water changes, scrub the sides of everything, keep it super clean. I mean, you can do anything really, but to be safer than sorry, what is the if you had to have a seahorse tank with only one piece of equipment, what would it be?
A skimmer rated about
I
4
knew
times the size
Yep.
of your tank volume, including the sump. And by
Why?
the way,
Oh, go ahead.
skimmers are something else that was borrowed from wastewater treatment. That's
Yep.
what they were designed for.
Yep.
Now, mind you, their skimmers are really huge in the wastewater treatment. And believe it or not, with all the technology going on, they are still in use.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent's like you, Ray. He says, I'm like Ray. And Vincent, we got to get you back in here. I see your posts and I'm like, oh, look at how good those seahorses are doing. And I love that. That's what I love about this channel is that we get people in here with different, experiences. We can have Dan come in and say, you got to have this, this, and this. And then Ray can say, nope, as long as you're willing to do this, that, and the other, we're showing everybody how to do it. But go
By
ahead.
the
Sorry.
way, I've had my share of
There's
seahorses
K1
for
Media.
a year.
Thank you, Holly. I can't.
And it is that size. Like if you bring up a picture of it on your phone, it is actually, this is probably actual size. It's like
Show
not
it
even
again.
an inch. See if I can
Yeah.
get it right.
They're very
Yeah.
small. They're very
They
small.
remind me of pasta, like fancy pasta.
But see, the good bacteria lives in every little crevice, and
Yeah,
that's why
so they
it's
have so many little crevices, like you just said, and that so you get like this much of them together, and you've
Yep.
got as much surface as you'd have to have big in
5
other
rocks or
types of
something,
media,
right?
rocks and things.
It's just Holly nailed it.
It's just
It's just
another tool.
minimizing. It's minimizing if you want. So, like for instance, the reason that I'm using K1. In fact, that's a perfect example. I'm using K1 media reactor that I've made DIY in my 40-gallon all-in-one because it's a smaller tank. I have less equipment to maintenance it. I'm lazy. I don't like doing water changes or scrubbing and such. And so this gives me more good bacteria for the punch. I don't use it in the 65-gallon because I've got more water volume. I've got a sump. I've got a huge skimmer. I've got a algae scrubber. Blah 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 blah. Just same thing with the Robert King charge angler. I use it in the 40-gallon all one because I'm trying to get as much as I can in a smaller space to work better. So
One of the things
Right.
that happens with somebody that's new to keeping seahorses is they start out, the seahorses aren't necessarily looking good. They start getting worried. They start making multiple changes. They start making multiple changes so fast that they really don't have any idea what is working or what isn't working. Been there, done that. This is how I know it. Going back over 17 years ago. And all of a sudden, one day I woke up and I said to myself, you got to stop changing stuff so fast because
Yep.
you don't know what is not working. And the
Right.
best advice I can give people starting out, basically set up a decent system and then monitor your seahorses and make small changes. Don't try to change. In other words, don't defrost the refrigerator just to throw the food back in to get it
Right.
frozen.
Right.
Take your time, get to know them. You may lose some along the way. However, that's preferable to losing a bunch down the road, and you will learn so
Right. But
much.
I'm sorry, but I want to say you're not going to lose them if you set up properly, just following the basic guidelines, not
I
saying
agree.
you have to have this, that, and the other. Just saying, make sure you have 30 gallons per pair. Make sure that you don't use this substrate. Make sure that this, that, and the other. In Dan's list of how to set up a seahorse tank, it's very vague. It's not specific. He does say get a skimmer. And Cheryl, would you say a skimmer is the most important thing to have on a seahorse tank?
I think a skimmer, uh, I run skimmers on all my systems that are rated for 180 gallons. My biggest systems run about 80 gallons. So I'm more than double on my skimmer. That's one piece of the puzzle. But even if you're running a skimmer and you have a nitrite spike, you just screwed yourself.
Right. You got to set up right. You have to have the water volume. You have to have the biological filter, the mechanical
Yeah.
filter. Yep. But would the skimmer be the most important mechanical filter that you would recommend?
A skimmer, a good basic something that'll give them flow
Mm-hmm.
because they definitely need flow. They also need air, but not a air little air bubbler.
Right. Right.
Better off doing an open-ended airline tube. There's several pieces to it from my perspective,
I
and
agree.
without each one functioning properly, you're going to reduce your success.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because the question should have been what's the best or what's the one mechanical part of the equation that you would advise? Because you're absolutely right, Cheryl. It's not just mechanical. You have to have the biological, you have to have the
Exactly.
flow and all of that. Absolutely.
Vincent's
Hello,
trying to
everyone.
get on, he says. Is he
Oh,
trying to get on
oh,
the feed?
that was the noise I
There you
heard. Hi,
go.
Vincent. How you doing?
Vincent,
Can we hear you? Say something,
can
Vincent.
you hear us?
Okay, now
Now,
Oh,
Ta-da!
yay. How are you
Well,
doing?
I'm doing good. Hey, Ray.
Hi.
Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but from the reef tank years and years ago, I started the Seahorse Forum over there
Oh, wow.
in the
Which
early
forum?
the reef tank. Remember
Uh,
the forum, the reef tank?
I was on so many forums. I think I
Yeah,
was on 13 different forums.
yeah,
I remember the reef tank.
yeah. I started the Seahorse
That's
forum on that one.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
still on that one.
Well, and I got to give a shout out real quick. They put me in charge of the Seahorse Forum on Humble
Humble.
Fish. Yeah, and I'm not good at running forums, so Vincent, I need you to come help. so, but it's great. But yeah,
I love
anyways.
fish also.
By the way,
Well, I'm gonna have to make you an admin. Go ahead, Ray. Sorry.
before we get too far into it,
Yes.
if somebody can't fit a skimmer into their situation, you can usually make a reactor or buy a reactor that you can use GAC in it. That'll take out anything and more that a skimmer will. I just found out when we're looking at this new testing to find a way to look after our water.
Yes.
Randy Holmes Farley brought up a point that not all dissolved organics are skimmable, but all dissolved organics are removed by the GAC.
Really, but wait, I have a question about that real quick, and then we're going to go to Vincent because I'm so glad you jumped in. But when Dan talks about a skimmer, it's not just the removal of the dissolved organics; it's also something about aeration, right?
That's something that we have
Disagreement?
a point of contention on.
Huh?
If in a skimmer, this is going back maybe 30 years ago, and with Randy Holmes on Reef Central, the point was made that you have lots of oxygen bubbles bubbling up there. If the skimmer is doing its job, it attracts the dissolved organics that coat the bubbles. They aren't going into the bubbles, they coat the outside of the bubble. When it coats the outside of that bubble, it can no longer do the oxygenation and gas exchange. That say, if you stick an open-ended airline in your tank, you'll
Like
get
Cheryl's.
more effect from that than you will from the actual skimmer. Not that the skimmer won't do anything.
I was going to say, I'm sorry.
People think because there's a lot of air and everything there that it's a fantastic tool for aerating. But if you've got it dialed in correct, it's attracting that stuff and coating the bubbles so that they can no longer function as a gas exchange device.
So why does it affect pH then? Because in my reef tank, that's literally one of the ways that I solved some of my problems with pH. And I know we don't care much about pH in a Seahorse tank, but in my reef, again, I had so many pH troubles. It kept dropping, and running the airline outside fixed the problem.
Yep, running the airline outside for the skimmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's not going to completely coat all the bubbles so that there's not anything, but it's more effective for that purpose to just, if you took that airline from outside and just ran an open-ended airline in your tank, you would have had a better result.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And Vincent, I know you want to talk, and I want to know if you would say that the chart or the RK char chamber is better than a skimmer. Go ahead.
It's not better. I'm not going to say it's better than a skimmer, but I will say, as far as the bubbles, when you put the line outside, even if it's not aerating the water, it's bringing oxygen into that area, and that would raise the pH.
No, that makes sense because I mean I have smokers in my house. Our windows never open. Maybe the point was just getting the outside air in, not that. So an open-ended airline would just be putting the same crappy air in, whereas outside, okay, makes sense.
As long as you're not going like where there's pesticides or anything like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I
How are the Seahorses, Vincent?
It's one of those things. If you know the system, if you know the room the tanks are in, you know the systems you're using. You've been doing it long enough. You can pretty much set up multiple systems the same way and have good success. The biggest problem I ran into when I was first starting with Seahorses years ago is I was changing too many things too fast, and all of a sudden things started looking good, but I didn't know what I changed that actually made the difference. And that's an important thing. You have to take your time and gradually build. And just because something works in my house does not mean it's going to work the same way in yours, because you're going to have different temperature, you're going to have different HVAC flow, you're going to have different contaminants coming in terms of dust and pollen and the like. Your water's different. So you have to, just because something works for me does not mean it's going to work for you.
but we can still help you. So ask
Yes.
questions. And Ray, I just want to say for an old fogey like you call yourself, you're doing an amazing job as an admin because you're out there saying hello to people in the comments. Hi, Amazon Research Center for Remote Fishes. I miss you guys sometimes. I'm sorry. But Vincent, why don't you handle real quick Kevin's question? What chemical media do you recommend for a seahorse tank?
The only thing I'm using is char chamber,
Mm-hmm.
and I do have a skimmer on the fry tank, and a hang on the back. I don't have a sump, and I got right now I got about 50 in that 75, and they're all decent size right now, and they're doing great, you know. But I'm up on the water. I do
Yep.
water changes all the time. Couple
How often?
Once or twice a week, at least almost 50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
And
lot
that
of water to change.
It's a lot of
great.
water changes, but it's to me it's easier than spending money on equipment.
I agree.
I disagree. I don't like doing water changes, and my water sucks, you guys. So this is just showing. This is why I like this channel. You know,
Yeah.
we different ways, different strokes for different folks, right? I mean, I would rather spend the money than have to, you know,
Do the
my
work.
my TDS is 430. Okay, guys. So I have
Yeah,
to
that's bad.
replace. Yeah, I have to replace my filters constantly on the RODI. Doesn't work for me. So, you know, if you're in a situation where your water's just bad, I'd say that's the first step is find out your water TDS and go from there. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying though. And so
Well, my first batch was raised that way because I didn't have adequate filtration for them. I mean, they came along and grew up before I had a big enough tank or the right equipment. So they grew up in a 29-gallon with constant water changes. But they made it. But I
yeah,
went through a lot of salt and a lot of hard work.
see, yeah, you're still spending money because you got to buy the salt. But
You got to buy the
Vincent,
salt, but it's not that expensive. I mean, because I get
right?
from Chewy, and they deliver it for free.
Yeah.
I'm
I love
laughing
Chewy.
because
I love Chewy. And I would say if anybody wants to see, and please, you guys, if you're brand new, don't go put 50 seahorses in a 75-gallon.
No,
This
no.
guy's he got it
no.
figured out. But if you want to see a amazing, spectacular bunch of seahorses swimming around all over each other, all over everything, go to Vincent's post because it's really it's endearing. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I'm laughing because my first seahorse tanks were 29 gallons. Well, all my 29 gallons, and I bought several more, I now have at least 10, have all been turned into sumps. Built them myself with baffles. But it's one of those things where when I was first starting out, I didn't know seahorses would really use a 50, 80, 100-gallon tank. And it took me some time to figure out, well, the 29 gallons are better as sumps.
But
And that's
hey, Vince, yep, Vincent. How did you even start? Like, what
I
got you started with seahorses, and how
I
did you end up with so
started.
many?
got me started with seahorses.
No,
I
no, no.
walked
I
into
was at no Cheryl. I was asking Vincent.
Oh, okay.
What in 1972 when I got out of the army, I, I went home back to Albuquerque, got me a little studio apartment, went and got into marine fish. It was first time store in Albuquerque, Clark's, and I did marine fish in the mid 80s. I got into reef tanks. Well, I didn't know any better. I got my first seahorses, and they lived for several years in a reef tank, and I didn't
Wow,
know anything about it. And they
wow.
had they had fry, but I just let the tank absorb them. You know, at
Sure.
that time I didn't even try it. But then I got in the early 2000s. I bought some red eye, and I decided to breed them. We were breeding some clownfish at a store I was working, and so I started breeding the red eye, and I set up a big room, and I lost batch after batch, and
Mm,
then I finally got the hang of it. But And life goes on. I've had tanks all my life, and then in 2016, I was still doing reefs, and our house flooded, and I
Mm.
lost everything in that flood. And then I said I'll never do it again, never get another tank. And then I ended up getting into it, and I decided, well, I'm going to do not clownfish, seahorses.
Yep.
And the only ones I could find were erectus.
Yep.
And so I started messing with them, and it turned out they were easier. And
Absolutely.
a
Hey,
lot
what was the species that you had in the reef tank? Do you know what species they were?
they were red eye.
Red eye.
Okay.
Red
Okay.
eye, we call them red eye, red eye.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so why do you think the erectus are easier?
Well, I mean, for fry, they're easier
Okay.
Mhm.
because I had to do rotifers, green water, and man, I lost batch after batch. I'd make it to 30 days and lose them all.
Yep.
And took me
Breed
forever.
eye were the first ones I ever raised, and it took me my 10th batch before I was successful.
Yeah, but yeah, because that was it. I always liked them, but I love my reef too. My reef is neglected because of the seahorses.
And
My
how many?
favorite,
Sorry.
my,
How
my
many?
favorite is still Combs.
Yep. I know you're the Combs lady. How many seahorses do you currently have, Vincent?
Well, just the fry and male and a female.
Well, they're not fry anymore.
Well, no,
They're
I got all the juveniles, and then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have another pair.
They're
How
getting
old
good
are they?
size.
Well, they're 6 months old. They were born, let's see, April 12th.
Mhm.
nice. And someone said earlier that weaning fry is such a pain in the butt. Did you have trouble with that?
I did the first batch,
Okay.
but it was their first fry. So I don't
Yep.
know if that played it, but I had a bacterial infection that took them out. And
Mm.
but I wasn't I didn't rinse my food the
Ah.
way I should, the brine
Yeah.
shrimp, and I think that's what caused the bacterial.
Mm.
When
Yep.
you
That's
were
where.
when you
Go
were
ahead, Cheryl.
raising reed eye, initially, what were you feeding them for?
Rotifers from reed mariculture, and then green
Yeah.
water because I kept them in green water
Uh-huh.
in the
Yeah.
early.
The reason I'm asking is if you're still working with that species, you would probably have an even higher success and more rapid growth rate if you would start culturing something like the A. panamensis pods and feed them the neonatal pods. As they're much smaller than baby brine shrimp. In fact, the adults typically are about the size of an adult brine shrimp.
Yeah.
And I've had extremely good luck with both the combs and engines that require very tiny food as their initial first food. It's just something I'm throwing out to you. That,
Well, no, that's great, Cheryl, and it's because the more that we do these
Actually,
things and share, the more that we learn. Go ahead, Vincent. Sorry.
actually, that's what I like to do again. Get some red eye because they're not as
Yeah.
common.
Mhm.
yeah,
Not
And
like
we're
because
not on Facebook, so I get to ask, Vincent, are you selling your seahorses?
yes,
All right. How does
but
someone contact you?
well, there's a store here in Aqua Hut. Kevin knows where it's at. It's Aqua Hut. He has 6 of my seahorses in his seahorse tank. The
Nice.
guy is such a great guy. He doesn't. He hasn't been selling them. He gives everybody my phone number. He said
Nice.
pick them up directly from him,
yeah,
and
that's
they
good.
call me up or text me and come pick them up. Now
But you don't ship.
I was gonna ship, but shipping has gotten so expensive,
Oh, I know.
Mhm.
I know.
and people have gotten turned off, and I'm not real comfortable with it. But
Mhm.
I went out and got the boxes, the bags, everything, and then when you can't ship for unders, like small time, it's gonna cost
Yeah.
70, $80.
Yeah, it's going to
Oh
cost.
yeah, I ran into that myself.
Well, Vincent, I'm going to hit you up on the side because I happen to have a female turned male and now need more seahorses. So I'll hit you up on the side. Holly managed to send me seahorses first time. Everything went well. So maybe me and you will work it
Yeah.
out and
Well,
try to
and
test it out.
Kevin's from my hometown. And
Oh,
Kevin, if you want
yeah.
some seahorses, all you have to do is contact me.
And Kevin said it's John Caro is the guy you're talking about
Yeah,
at
John, yeah.
Aqua Hut. So
Aqua Hut.
can you say the state you live in?
Louisiana, I live in Denham Springs, but that's in Baton Rouge, Prairieville.
Just to let anybody watching out there that watches later know, you got some good seahorses from there. Go ahead.
Do you have Reed-eye now, or do you have Erectus?
I just have Erectus.
Yeah.
If I find some red-eye, I'll pick them up.
Well, and we can hook you up with that too, with the source for that if you're interested, because look. I used to have 5 different species in it, and I miss that. But I'm not disciplined enough. Like I already told you guys, I'm not about water. I'm not disciplined enough. What?
You had to give up your life.
Exactly. So that's why I need people like you to give up your life so that I can get your babies.
That's what my wife don't like about it.
Oh,
because we can't do anything.
I know.
Yeah.
Wait, you're the one that has all the beautiful brown Erectus with the heavy silver saddle markings.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now to me they look more black.
They are. Yeah. They're lovely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one that cares about color. I love that.
Sent to me. Yeah.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
To me. He came in pewter silver. He never changed color. And his mate, I raised myself. I got him from Draco Marine. His mate, but every morning when he was pregnant, she would search all over the tank until she found him, and she would go right next to him and turn her whole head same pewter silver every morning. It was truly something to behold.
I love when you get a special seahorse like that. Hey, real quick, guys, just a side note, Shyla, tank update. There was a mishap in her tank that drained all the water.
Yeah.
In that waterless tank for 30 minutes. How?
Yep.
I've had to pick young seahorses off the floor when I was raising seahorses. One time I was transferring them from one tank to another, and I thought I had them all. And probably about 20 minutes after the fact, I walked by near where the old tank was, and I saw some movement. I looked down, and there was like 3 of them on the floor and about 5 of them on the table. Hey, what about me? And I scooped them all up real quick and put them in their new home, and they were all okay. They were probably there a good 20 minutes.
I have actually come home from work and found it when I had the 65 gallon with the breeding pair in there. I have come home from work and found a whole batch of sock. And I called Dan and I'm like, oh my God, I lost them all. And he's like, no, wait. Go to put them in water, see what happens. And like 90% of them lived. Vincent, what were you going to say?
I had a fry once, and I was doing it because in the early days when they're a couple days old or whatever, or right after I do the formalin, well, I do 100% water changes. Well, I did one time, but I got the water from the wrong tank, and it was fresh RODI water. And I filled it up, put them in it, and they were swimming around. I was sitting there, and they were swimming around, and all of a sudden it hit me. And I realized that's fresh water. So I took them all out, put them in salt water, and put it all back, and they all survived.
See, I mean,
they're pretty hardy physically.
Yeah, that's why I try to say all the time on this channel, because, we talk about, oh, the worst case scenario, or, oh, you have to do all this, or, oh, that, or this. But the bottom line is they have a weak immune system because of their stomach, yes, but they're really hardy. as long as you don't have the bad bacteria and the parasite, I mean, they are going to do so well. I remember Tom Hornsby telling me about putting them in. What's the thing they use for hydroids? Ray, what's used for hydroids? The name of it? Goat wormer. Fembendazole. Anyways, she was treating for hydroids, and she thought she had all the fry out of the tank. She treated this tank completely, and then after it was a cloudy mess, and she sees this little fry swimming up, saying, "Where's my food?" And he was fine. I mean, they're much hardier than we let on. We just try to give you anything you might need if you have a problem, but they're much hardier.
Yeah, they are pretty hardy and one thing, and it might not be for everybody,
Yeah.
but I kind of think that you need to get them used to a range.
Okay.
I don't use a heater.
No.
I don't use a chiller. So my tanks they'll have swings. I mean,
Really?
It'll be a good swing, and it's never affected anything.
Really?
And I don't check the water from when I make up salt water and let it circulate, and the pump warms up. The water, it'd be a lot warmer than what's in the tank, and I do a 50% change, and that changes it. But it never really. I think if they get used to that gradual back and forth, they adjust to it. And it's the same thing as if you keep them in a sterile system forever.
Yep.
Well, then they're not going to ever be able to me, handle a system that has other stuff in it. So
I actually agree with you. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I think, sometimes we overdo it. And I don't believe in letting my tanks run me. I'm going to run my tanks. I mean, it's kind of like I have to enjoy it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
I changed my water out today for the first time without heating it up. Like some of you guys were saying, like you don't check the temperature to match the tank when you're doing your water changes. So I did that today. So the water I put in was in the high 50s. And what was in the tank was 69, and they didn't care. The water dropped down to 64 in the tank after I added the cold water. But nobody seemed to mind it.
Wait. Hang on. I got to say real quick, I do think that there's a difference in cooler water versus hotter water. So we always say try to stay between or beneath 74 degrees. And I have personally experienced a pair of three seahorses get a bacterial infection after a temp spike, not drop, spike. I agree with Vincent. A range is good. And actually, I would say, Vincent, you're doing us all a favor, because when a breeder, as you said, if they have too sterile a system, then the seahorse isn't going to do as well in a tank, right? So I think you're doing us all a favor by exposing the seahorses to more in your care, where you know what to do about it, so that we don't have to deal with it, right? Yeah. But I would still say, please, anybody new, stay under 74 degrees, because when my seahorses tank went to 82 or something, in hours, not days, and then I tried to drop it, and I didn't lose them, but they got sick, and there's a whole video about that.
That's 82 now. That probably get me a little
worried. I'm going to give you an example. First real success I had raising fry years ago, and we basically got into severe ice storm. Took down my neighbor's tree. My neighbor's tree took out my power, and my fry tank, and they were only about an inch and a half long. First time I'd ever gotten a bunch of fry to that point. Their tank dropped down to 45 degrees. Because I had no way to heat them. This was before I bought a generator and all the other stuff. And I put a heating pad on the bottom of the tank because it was on a stand that sat up off the floor. And all of a sudden, they started raising their little heads, And eventually they started moving around even more. And they start to swim up higher in the tank, much colder, and they go darting back down.
Yeah.
I spent 3 days gradually rewarming those little guys to get them back up to a reasonable temperature, and I did not lose a single one of them.
Right, exactly. And Vincent's point was good too, that a little bit of a range is fine, but if you're talking about 82, that's different. Hey, Holly, in your case, when it goes down, they can handle colder temperatures. The colder temperatures, as Ray always says, colder temperatures, the bad bacteria can't exist as well, and so therefore it's even better for them. But have you noticed, Vincent? I'm curious. Have you noticed that the seahorses aren't as frisky in colder temperatures? Or do you have a thought?
Well, mine don't get that cold. Mine don't get that cold, and because I'm controlling it with the house,
right?
And it's always going to be warm. I mean, it's always going to be warmer than what. No, maybe it's don't get warmer. At night it cools off.
Right.
And in the daytime, as it warms up, it goes up a little bit. But then it caps out because I keep my air cold. But I haven't really noticed the difference. But to me, it seemed like they would be more.
My tanks are about 8 degrees warmer than my house right now.
See, mine's the exact opposite.
Yeah, mine's the opposite.
I use Central Air Lights, and my tanks are always a few degrees under what the house is. I don't know why, but
probably because
maybe
of nighttime.
Maybe
nighttime is probably dropping the pick.
But I just make sure that my house never gets above 74 degrees. That's my trick. And therefore the tanks are never over 74 degrees. Vincent's right though. We talk a lot about temperature and swings, but when I say that, I'm talking about 82 degrees, not 60, 70. But I just think that they can handle more than we expect. However, if you're brand new, there's nothing wrong with trying to keep it succinct. But go ahead, Vincent.
Most hobbyists aren't going to be able to keep it down that low. They're not going to have chillers. I mean, that's probably 96% of the hobbyists not going to invest in a chiller. And so realistically, I mean, you got to kind of go up. And
right. But Vincent, I'm curious. Hang on, Vincent. When you're talking about a tank, what is the temperature of your tank? I'm curious.
I usually 76.
Okay.
And might get up to 77.
Okay.
And sometimes it'd go down to 74, depending on what time of year. But it'll fluctuate between that, and I don't do anything to change it.
Right, and you're training and raising seahorses that can handle those temperatures, so that's great. But my curiosity is what else is in the tank, because I think messed up a lot.
Well,
because we talk about bacteria, bad bacteria, and blah blah blah. But whatever you add to the tank adds to whatever's in the tank. You get my point? So what's in your tank?
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't put anything in it but plastic, some plastic hang-on things, and that's for these. For the adults, I put them in a reef, like reef setting.
Right.
And they have all kinds of bacteria and everything in that tank, and it fluctuates. And they're fine,
There you go, folks. I mean, it can happen.
Back in 1984, I kept those things alive, and my tanks back then were 79, 80 degrees.
Well, and we've talked about repeatedly, though, and I'm not disagreeing. I think it's amazing what you're doing and what you've done. It's so admirable. But we've talked endlessly, it depends on the seahorse, right? If you have a really good, healthy seahorse, that's different from, it's just.
Well, that's the same with any fish.
Exactly. Whenever Cheryl or Vincent or Ray or Dan or even Holly talk, and I'm like, hey guys, but wait a minute, it's still okay to do this. It's because I'm just looking out for the newcomer. If you're new to seahorses and you want to keep seahorses, just stick to the rules. you can go outside of them, but I would say learn seahorses first, like have a pair, keep them the way you're supposed to, and then gradually go to, doing things like this,
Well,
because Vincent's not wrong.
well,
I
I think
suspect Vincent's taking care of the problem with sufficient water change
Exactly.
volume and frequency,
I think
and
that's the key
that in
is
itself will make a big difference in
the quality of
succeeding.
the tank is more important than anything.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
siphon out the tank 2 times a day,
Mm-hmm.
because when you got that many in a tank and they build up waste, you can see it on the bottom. I siphon everything out twice, in the morning and at night, and
Yeah.
don't let anything quit. Now food they will not leave on the bottom. They clear out. When I feed them, they're going across the bottom of the tank, and you can actually hear them popping.
Snick.
Yeah, the click.
Yeah, they're clicking,
Yeah.
and you got 50 of them all clicking at the same time.
Woo! I love that sound.
Yeah.
But no, Vincent, I'm glad you said that, and Ray, thank you for your input, because that's the truth. Is we go back and forth and we talk about all this stuff. There's so many ways to do this, and it's just that you got to understand, if you want to have a simple system, you need to have nothing else and do major water changes. If you've got all the advanced equipment, you still need to stay away from certain fish and coral. I just like to throw the things out there for anybody new, but I mean, you're obviously doing an amazing job, Vincent, and yeah, I can't imagine. How much when you siphon, do you replace the water with RODI or with salt water, or what do you do?
When I siphon it, I'm gonna check the salinity after a couple days, and if I need to add more, I'll dilute salt water just to try to keep it the same. And yeah, because I'm siphoning not that much. I mean, if you have a 5-gallon bucket, I might be siphoning a quarter of an inch of water to get everything off the bottom. I have a rigid tube on a flex tube.
Yeah.
I just siphon it out. I did a video of it once. And,
well, hey, send me a link to that video so I can link it, because I still use a turkey baster, and I think maybe I siphon too much.
I do it like Vincent. I do the same thing after every feeding. And then I also, because I keep my water level in the sump lower, I replace it every time with salt water. And like Vincent, every few days I check the salinity to see if I need to add more fresh, because my salinity bounces up and down because of that siphoning. But I ended up, it depends on how many meals they get in a day, because that varies too with my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm siphoning out of each tank probably an average of 2 gallons a day between all the feedings.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
I
was siphoning too much.
Out.
So is it just that you have so many seahorses eating so much, Vincent, you think, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can see it, they're little poop all over the bottom of the tank, and it all collects in one half of the tank and close to one of the char chambers. I have 2 char chambers in it, and I just siphon it out, and they know when they see me, they all come up.
Yep.
They know.
Yeah.
You siphon it, you're feeding us.
I was thinking about that one.
Oh, wait,
I was considering that.
Funny thing, my seahorses, because I need to get an open-ended airline like you guys, because I use the baster to siphon, and it sucks up too much water. Obviously, we're learning that as we speak. But the seahorses associate the baster with feeding. So they're chasing me around the tank as I'm trying to get up the old food, and it's like going everywhere. And that's another trick, learning how to feed.
That's all it is.
My rigid airline is a drinking straw.
Here, let me make you guys big. Hang on. Vincent, show me one more time.
All it is a rigid line I got from Brine Shrimp Direct.
Yeah.
On a flexible line.
See, I need to get one of those. And you want to show us the tank real quick?
Yeah, watch this when they come up, because I'm
God, look at them. Oh, I'm so
jealous. They're not all
hungry.
Yeah. All right, Dad.
I love that. Oh my God, I love that. I love
But
it.
but I already fed them.
Yeah, don't overfeed. Don't do that.
Well,
Yeah,
they'll eat
so
it.
all mine is a drinking straw.
Oh, here, let me make you big.
It's a drinking straw from a fast food joint.
Nice. But I
It's
mean,
a flexible line, like he said. My line, I think, is a little bigger. I
Yeah,
use a wider, but a drinking straw fits inside it, and that way I can switch them out as they wear out, and they're free instead of paying for Rigid Airline.
and you can keep your
I
hand from
like
going in the
free.
tank.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
My
another
hand don't
thing.
go in the tank. It just goes on the outside of the tank.
Oh, so
Now,
yours is longer. Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
adults, I don't do it all the time, but for the small ones, I do.
And did
I
you
do
see those
both.
seahorses, you guys? Those weren't small seahorses. Those
No,
were
No,
they're
huge
good size
seahorses.
now. Those are good
But
size
I
seahorses.
remember when they were just little bitty,
And
I
they're
teeny
know.
little
teeny. Yeah,
things,
they're
you
so
know.
cute. I
And
miss
Well,
having the babies. I just
I
don't
do
miss taking care
too.
of them.
Oh no, I want babies badly. I mean, I'm telling you, Vincent, I'm getting with you on the side because I need some babies in my life. Not
and
real
they
babies, but
and they
huh?
well, that's the hard thing with shipping, you know, is like, God, I would just hate to lose Eddie of them, and
Yeah.
Well,
you
I'm
know, but
saying live. If anything
yeah,
like that happened, it would be on
no,
me. But I understand
no,
what you're saying. You just don't want them to pass. I get it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I had somebody that wanted never did see salt water at all, and he said, "Oh, my wife wants some," and I told him,
Yeah.
"Well, learn something about salt water
Right.
before, and don't
Right.
jump into sea. I don't think it's myself. I don't think it's a good first thing. I think Holly was her first, right? You jumped right into seahorses.
Yeah. Yeah. See, well, the first thing actually was a blue damsel because we're talking late 80s, and that's the way they told you to
Cycle
cycle
the
a
tank.
tank back then was with damselfish. So I had a pair of damsels, I think, and then after I'd had them and they had passed away, the tank was cycled. Then I got seahorses and didn't know much about them at all. But, nobody I talked to really did. And the internet wasn't a thing back then,
Well, I tell you
you
what,
Right.
know.
them first ones I put in that reef, I didn't know what they ate. I
Yeah.
put them in the reef and they survived. And
Mm-hmm.
That's
I
so
guess
amazing.
pods, yeah, pods. I guess is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what because when I met my wife, we've been married 33 years. That was the tank I had when we met her. I had the seahorses in that
Well,
Mm-hmm.
you
reef.
know what though? I think that makes me think that they were likely wild caught,
They might
and
have been wild caught.
therefore,
Mm-hmm. I'm
right, and
sure mine were.
when right back then, that's what would happen. But those seahorses were used to. It kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about making a tank too sterile when you're breeding, because the seahorses you got back then that were wild caught were used to having to hunt for food and finding
Yeah.
something to eat. So they figured it out. So there's,
Well,
I mean,
I've
to
noticed
make
something
it. Go
else.
ahead. Yep.
When you have seahorses in a bare bottom tank, and they're raised in a bare bottom tank, and then you put them in a tank with sand, that confuses them when they go to feed.
Yes,
It
agreed.
I mean, it really does confuse them,
Right. What's
and
this?
they miss the food, and you
Mhm.
got to really be careful.
I will say in every sanded seahorse tank I've ever had, I usually target fed instead of broadcast feeding because they wouldn't take it off the floor. Ray, you look like you have something to say.
I'm just wanting to cut in and say I'm going to cut out now. The pain level's getting too high, so I got to go lie down.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for coming.
We're
We're
Hey,
gonna
Take
Ray,
care.
nice
take
meeting
transition.
you.
care.
I know you as Ray,
Yep.
and that's what I know you as.
So hey,
Another thing just before I leave, is it just me or is Vincent's volume down? I
is
have
it?
I have a hard time hearing what he says. Everybody else I can hear very easy, but with Vincent I strain.
Anybody in the audience, let me know. I just turned him up. If he's too loud now, let me know. But I would
I think
say
he's
Ray,
just quiet.
maybe.
I'm on this Google laptop,
Uh,
and I don't know how good the microphone is.
does he
So
sound
your
better,
volume
Ray?
You
is
sound
better.
louder now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I turned it up. Sorry. And Ray, I would just say, anytime you think you're not helping Seahorse people and all of us, and just being friendly and just being wonderful, remember, so many people know you as Ray J, and you
Ray
are
J.
still helping
Ray
always.
J,
Oh
and you
We
yeah,
always
I
appreciate it.
help
wouldn't
me.
have been able to raise any of
What-
the ones I did without Ray. Ray was the first person to give me advice on what to do.
That's a better nickname than when I was a teenager. They used to
Well-
call me Wormy.
Oh, okay. Let's not go
Yes.
there.
We used to deliver for a drugstore, and there was always 4 of us on at a time. And if we had some slack time, we'd get out horsing around on the lawn in front of the hospital, and they could never hold on to me, so they started calling me Wormy. I
I'm
had
gonna
that through half
Ray,
my
you are priceless.
all these guys moved away.
I'm
Anyway,
gonna stick with Ray J. You go take care of you, Ray, and
Yep.
we appreciate you. Is all I wanted to say. We appreciate
Yeah.
you.
okay, night
Have a
all.
good night.
Night. Have a good
Good
night,
night,
Ray.
Ray.
Ray can sometimes like come off hardcore because he's like, no, you can't do that, but he only cares and he knows what he's talking about, and we love him. So
He
Uh,
definitely knows what
I
he's
do have a
talking
question
about.
for Vincent.
yes,
Yeah.
go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, are you or have you ever been a member of Seahorse.org?
Seahorse.org. I know it because Ray J told me a million times to go over there, but I don't know if I've actually a member of it. You know,
Uh,
I
if
know
you-
of it.
If you want to, the information that is there is old.
Yeah.
But there's still a tremendous amount of really valuable information there. I'm admin on the org, have been for many years. And if you decide you want to join, email me or message me because I'm very, very leery. We get a lot of spammers trying to get
Yeah.
in.
Well, and the
Well,
site's not really maintained very much. It's great information, but like I don't like the forum anymore.
Well, the
just to be
day,
honest,
the days of the forum, they reached
are
their
gone.
peak,
Yep.
you know, and it was a good time. That was back in the days of the local clubs.
Yep.
Remember the
Yes.
local clubs? And those days are kind of gone. The local clubs have broken up and don't meet anymore.
Agreed.
But the
Agreed.
forums were big because I was on all, you know, Reap Central, the Reap Tank. I'm still a moderator on the Reap Tank. We don't have any traffic, no
Yeah.
traffic at all. And I miss the days of the forum when they were really information was just being passed around. But
Well, everything online has changed so much since then because second time I got into seahorses was around that time. And that was before Facebook and all that.
Yeah.
That was, you know,
oh yeah, that was
like
before all that.
2007, I think, is when I had my second go round with seahorses. And yeah, it was completely different. I remember like in the 90s using DOS
Yeah.
on
Oh,
the
wow.
computer,
Well, remember the
not
bulletin
Windows,
boards?
and
They used
everything
to be bulletin
changed
boards.
really fast.
Yep. Bulletin boards. Yeah.
Bulletin boards is how it all started. Then it was, I think, in the late 90s is when all the forums started. Reap Central, the Reap Tank, and which at
Reef
one
to
time
Reef,
was
all of them.
one Reap to Reap. Yeah, that's the only big one now. And then Humble Fish has taken off.
I
And,
hope.
Well,
They're
well,
great.
yeah, the information on that is different than any other site.
It's updated.
Well, it's
you know, they got the
updated.
peroxide stuff. They got
But
the
yeah, when it comes to health of fish
yep.
and disease, you can't beat Humble Fish.
Agree.
And sometimes it's overwhelming because that's all it is.
Yeah.
But I do usually they'll call me out if someone needs something with seahorses over there. What's your
Good.
name over there?
Yeah, I think it's Seahorse Whisperer.
Is it?
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, it
You
is.
posted on the Seahorse forum. I saw it, so I'll message you over
Yeah, because I'm
and
on
I'll
that.
make you admin.
I'm on that, and Dirks, I think that's how you pronounce it. Dirks, he does quarantine fish.
Yep.
When someone asks a seahorse question, he'll do Felicia, me, you.
Yep.
He'll put it in there,
And I never respond
and
because
see
I'm
Bobby
slacking.
actually he featured my seahorses on the website a
Oh,
while back.
nice.
Yeah, and well, it was
I think
about
I
the
saw
last
it.
time I was there. The last time I was there, you know, I don't feel I'm an expert, but I've been doing it for a long time, and
You give good advice.
Mhm.
That's it. Well,
Well,
as I
I
said,
still make mistakes.
we all do. I had a cloudy tank last
Everybody
week,
does.
and I shared why, because we got, that's what I hate the most, is when people say, I know it all, this is how you
Mhm.
do it, that's it. Because it's not the truth. There's so many ways.
no, it's,
And when I make a mistake, I'm
Many
like,
ways
you
to say
guys, look,
man.
I screwed up. This is what I
Mhm.
did. This is how I fixed it. Half my videos are about, listen, my seahorse has
yeah.
got a bacterial infection. This is how I treated it, because nobody's perfect. And so I am going to go over there tonight as soon as we get done here, and I'm going to make you an admin so
All
that,
right.
because I'm not good at social media anymore. I'm getting old, you guys. I
You
can't
think you're
I can't
old?
keep up.
I'm
I
right
know, but
behind Ray.
yeah, but I have twin daughters,
Yeah.
okay, and seahorses. All right, but no, I'm not making excuses. I need to get back into it. But
Yeah.
I want your help over there,
Yeah.
because I want that form to take off, and I'm not
One
keeping up with
thing
a
I
lot.
would like to add in is Alicia and I are very good friends. We've been working together for quite some time. And if you need assistance with seahorses, whether it be a medical
And
problem,
Felicia?
Do you mean
huh?
Alyssa?
She means
Alyssa?
Alyssa.
Oh, Alyssa.
Alyssa
Her
for
name's Alyssa.
Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, please do not hesitate to message me or contact me directly because I still, after all these years, I'm still here to try to help people be successful in keeping seahorses.
Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? You're the one that helped Francis keep all of his seahorses, both
Yep.
species. I mean, you fixed him. I mean, you helped him fix the
Well,
problem.
I'm gonna
So
tell you, Cheryl.
absolutely.
I'm when I first started with the red eye, I took 2-gallon fish bowls, just the fish bowls. I drilled holes in them. I put mesh on them, and then I'd put them in either one in a 10-gallon or two in a 20-gallon long.
Yeah.
I had aqua lifters that would
Mm-hmm.
3 gallons a minute would pump in, create a
Mm.
circular motion, and the
Mm-hmm.
water would go out the sides, and then I would feed them and give the green water. But then I saw your tubs,
Yep.
and I put together 2 tubs,
Mm-hmm.
and it just blew me away because they were self-cleaning, and they
Mhm.
just cleaned, went to the sump, and what I did is I put them in one, and one would be nothing in it. So when
Yep.
it
Mhm.
came time to do a
Over.
water change, I'd shut the valve, siphon that one out, fill it back up, turn the
Mhm.
valve on, circulate it, and let it go.
Yeah.
And I could one tub, and it made it so easy to just keep doing that. And
Mhm.
it's
My
self-clean, and
tubs, yeah, I run 2 tubs on each 29-gallon sump. And that gives
Hmm.
me the ability to move seahorses, young seahorses, from one tub to a clean tub,
Yep.
clean the tub, set it
Yeah.
back up, and I'm still good to go.
Mhm.
Well, you
see what
guys heard it here. When Cheryl talks about tubs, she's not playing. If you're interested in breeding,
Mhm.
tubs are the way to go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, that really made it nice. And then the little tube you pull out, just
yeah,
clean that off. And I made
The
extra
sleeve.
ones. Yeah,
Yep.
the sleeves. I made a bunch of
Yeah.
extra ones, and I just yank them out, take them out,
Yep.
put the new one in. The only thing
That's
I
what
didn't
we
do
did.
was put the coupling. You have that coupling
Mm.
where it fits in.
Yeah.
Well, my
yeah,
Yep.
bulkheads are big and they're tapered. And when I set mine down, it sets right on it. It'll tilt a little
Ah.
bit, but it completely seals it off. And it was like, oh, that's one step I didn't have to do.
yeah.
See?
Even my garage tanks, I have taken 59-gallon, 58-gallon oceanic tanks, cut out the overflow boxes, and use the same standpipe and return systems that I use on the nurseries as grow out tanks. It's kind of a pain taking them apart, but hey, they work great.
But then
But
it's
see, the point is, you're the information you share Cheryl wine. The information you share is really helping people. I mean, Vincent already obviously knows seahorses. He's been doing this for so long, but your information and
yeah,
your
oh yeah,
advice has helped him.
that's the only way I would do it now. I think people should do it for clownfish and
Yep.
for other type stuff. But see, then when they get to a certain point, I want to take them out because I want to view
Yeah.
them this
Yep.
way. And so once they get big enough and they're eating, then I just put them in and I can observe them eating, making sure they eat. And
That was my rule. Is I would try to start weaning them in the tubs, and then once they started eating frozen, they go in a tank. That was always my rule. But that's a good point, Vincent. And we need to get Tyann and maybe Robert King back in here. And Cheryl wants to have an episode where we talk about tubs, straight
oh,
tubs.
there was some food, myces, that has, I don't know how to pronounce it. It was green myces.
Green
What do you
mice.
what do you call that?
Like
Spirulina.
enriched? Oh,
Yeah,
Spirulina.
okay.
well, I bought some of that. The store that I deal with, the one that Kevin mentioned, he had some when I bought it. But then when I rinse it, because I rinse all my food for the seahorses, it just rinses out.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
don't think they're not gut fed. I think they're
Nope.
packaged.
Oh, they're
They're
packaged in it.
in it, and when you
Ah,
rinse it, you're just rinsing it all out. I mean, I'm sure a little bit sticks, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
was a little bit disappointed. You know, it was
Good to know.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why we always say it's better to gut feed when you're enriching live
yeah.
feeds because soaking foods. I mean, I ran into big trouble when I tried the Vibrance. I'm not saying it's a bad product;
I
it's
didn't use
great,
it.
but
That's from
well,
Hawaii.
yep. And
Yeah,
when I
I
used it,
tried it.
my pumps had orange shit. Excuse my language. Orange stuff in the pumps. It was everywhere, and it was not in the seahorses. It was in the water. But
Well,
Cheryl, did you ever let us know because you were experimenting with vibrance. What is
I
it?
did not find that it was effective, and in
Me neither.
reality, what it did was actually
Color them
increase
up.
contamination in the tanks, and I
Okay.
will not use it again.
well, see, to
Yeah,
me,
it,
it
it
was.
just seemed like more work to me, and it wasn't really doing anything. I didn't have the issue you had because I wasn't using a
I use too
whole lot
much.
of
Right.
it.
Right.
Well, I was soaking it and then rinsing it, but
Right.
it would still have some of the pinkish color to it. But I remember at first, the seahorses looked at me like,
What the hell
"What
is
the heck
this?
is that, Mom?" Yeah,
Well,
and
no,
Right.
then
and
they
I
started eating it, but I didn't. I after about 3 months or so, I stopped because it was just more work for me, and I wasn't really seeing any difference
yeah.
Mm.
in the seahorses. And we were talking about how it might just add more
To the organics, right?
to the
And I
yeah
do wonder though if it was fed like if it could be fed to Artemia or live mysids or something like that. But Vincent,
yeah
you were going to say something. Go
it
ahead.
might that might be better. Well, to me, when I was reading about it, it was
Hmm.
like it's almost like that's why they have these colors. They're supposed to
Mm.
color up your. I mean, that's
yeah
kind of what
Yep.
I took on it, and and,
yeah
uh, and I always wondered. I never tried it, and
Well,
I
one of the
do
things
gut
that
feed
I
my baby
I
brine.
didn't have that experience. It didn't affect their color at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and the thing is, oh, sorry, but the thing is, they're in, and I love Ocean Rider. I'm not saying anything bad
Hmm.
about them, but they are feeding their seahorses the Hawaiian red shrimp.
Yes.
So I don't think it's an enrichment that's causing the color in their seahorses.
Hmm.
okay.
I think it's the red
yeah.
shrimp.
It's the shrimp.
Whereas at home you don't have the red shrimp, or you
Yeah.
can continue to buy it if
You
you can
can
afford
buy
it.
it from
But
them, I think.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think
It's
it's the red
expensive as
shrimp.
heck.
it's probably pretty
The
expensive.
biggest thing you need to look at when feeding seahorses is like all saltwater fish. They need basically an HUFA and a DHA diet.
Cheryl's going scientific. Go ahead.
No,
Basically,
I know what she's saying too. I was
yeah,
kidding.
I
Go ahead,
enrich
Cheryl.
with
okay.
multiple
And
things.
yeah, as such, simply adding, I mean, you can increase that by adding krill and different
Mm-hmm.
saltwater
Foods.
organisms. However, adding spirulina and stuff like that really is not going to do a whole lot for them, and that's something we need to take a look at and understand more. I mean, when I first got into seahorses years ago, we didn't even know what DHA and EPA
Right.
meant to seahorses. Now
Right.
we understand that they need high levels to be able to develop completely.
And the
And it's,
lipids and all that. Yeah, that's what we're gonna make Dan cover and ask Seahorse Source Part Four. He's
okay.
gonna go through the scientific crap. Not crap. It's not crap. It's important. But for us average hobbyists, we just need the answers. We need Cheryl and Dan and the scientists to and Vincent to figure it out so that we can just say, okay, this works instead of all
Hey,
these products that don't. You know.
Dan and I were both paramedics. He's the one that stole the ambulance Christmas Eve several years ago and hid it in his garage. And
Yep.
I'm
So
the
you
one
didn't
that
have to
told him
work.
how to hide it and
Uh,
get out of there without getting into trouble. That's the joke.
Hey, Vincent, what enrichments do you use? And do you
well,
use
man,
them
I can't think of the
on
name.
live feeds?
Yeah, and I also use some of Alyssa's, and
Yep.
and then I have oh man, I can't think of the names. They're kind of they're stuck in the refrigerator by my
No
suit.
worries. In a future week when we discuss
Yeah,
this, we'll tell you the names.
I'll get
But
them out,
yeah,
and
but
and then
do
I
you
do
use
give
them
them
on
brine
live?
shrimp.
Okay.
Well, when I enrich the live food, that's what I use.
Okay.
But after getting that stuff and rinsing
What are
it
you
and seeing
feeding
it
for
all
life?
go,
I'm sorry,
well, I
what are
Wait,
don't
you
hang
feed
on.
feeding?
anything
Hang on.
right
Let me
now.
finish. Hang on.
Right
Let
now,
me
I'm not
finish.
feeding anything live. When they're young and I'm enriching the brine, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm enriching with stuff. Now it's just mices and
Yep.
brine shrimp and not live. And
I'm,
Nope. I'm
I'm,
with you.
mostly
I'm just curious because I have a much higher success long term feeding saltwater amphipods, mysid shrimp, things like that, intermittently is to supplement my adults. And that was why I was questioning it.
yeah. See, now when I had the H red eye and I had them in a macroalgae tank, it was just all macroalgae. There was hundreds, thousands of pods, the
Yeah.
little white
Mm-hmm.
ones you see all over. They ate
Yep.
those things all day. And so then I
Yes.
hardly had to feed them. And they just breed, have the babies. And back then I siphoned the babies out. They'd have the babies and I had a little siphon tube and I'd siphon them out to get them out of the tank.
Yep.
And maintenance free. I mean, that tank took care of itself, very
Yes.
few water changes. And I had two
But
pairs.
but now and that's so interesting because Dan and I have talked about when my mom died and I let my tank go to crap, the seahorses loved it because it looked like a freaking Amazon, but
It's a
they
jungle.
loved it. But they loved it. That's
You
what
see,
they're
that
used
algae is
to.
actually that
Yeah.
algae is actually cleaning that water.
Right.
It's taking those pollutants
Yep.
and feeding all that garbage out.
Yep.
But that's why you
Yep.
have to prune it. You need to
Take
export
out
that
the
garbage
stuff.
out. And so
I
as it,
have a video on it. Go watch the video.
but if
But
you don't take it out, it's going to go. Some of it will go asexual on you.
right, I've had
And
that
what's
happen too.
yeah,
I
I've had it
lost
happen.
my
It didn't hurt my seahorses though.
really
Did
because
not hurt my seahorses.
well, that's good to know because I had it happen in a dwarf seahorse tank, and the dwarf seahorse did end up dying. It was a smaller tank, and I think just the algae
Yeah.
spores took up all the.
Well,
Anyways, point
I had
being,
enough bubbles in there. I think enough bubbles, and then I had
yeah,
the skimmer was one that fit inside the tank
yeah. See, I
where
had
the
none
air
of that.
flown,
Yep.
and it wasn't very effective. And
So
the
if you
one
ever have, sorry, go ahead.
the one I
The
have
one,
on this tank isn't very. It's an Aquamax. Hang on
still,
the
it was
back.
it was
still
doing
does the job.
something. Yeah, it was still doing something, and I would say if you do ever have macros go sexual, you need to get air in that tank ASAP because I
That
didn't
only
know
it
that at
only
the
happens
time.
once because you learn
Yeah,
not to
exactly.
neglect.
Make sure you have oxygenation. But I just, yeah, no, I can't even remember what I was going to say because you got me on my dwarf lionfish. Now I'm going to go cry. No, I'm just kidding.
But my breeding pair is always in a dirty tank.
Yeah,
It's
no,
kind it's kind of
that was
funky.
it. Thank you for putting me back on topic. I
Yeah.
was going to say I've had seahorses do extremely well in a even nuisance algae covered tank. I've had them do well when I have a algae scrubber. That's an excellent way to filtrate a seahorse tank. I've also had them do extremely well in a sterile tank. It really depends on what you want and what your goals are. If you're breeding, you can't do the macro thing because I
Yeah.
did try adolescence and fry and breeding pair in a macro tank, and that did not work out well.
Well, the reason I got away from macro is the last macro I had aptasia.
Yep. Or hydroids.
And
Yep.
that stuff went crazy in the tank.
The only cure for aptasia is a flamethrower.
Well, that's not true. I have cures for aptasia. But I would just say, as Dan has always said, it's risk tolerance level. Do you want a beautiful tank more or do you want healthy seahorses more? It's really, I
Yeah,
keep
but
seahorses
I
and
looked at
snails,
Heather's tank and Holly's
but
tank,
I've also kept
beautiful
yeah, go ahead.
tanks,
Yeah.
and them seahorses are healthy.
Yep.
You know,
And so are yours.
I
And
had
so
people tell me when I was raising the fry, when I had the juveniles, people saying, "Oh wow, your tank is so clean." I said, "Yeah, well, their parents live in a slum
yeah,
because they did.
By the way,
This clay tank was
well,
really
wait, and I think it's important to go back to the fact that we need more breeders like Vincent that are not raising fry in this super sanitized area. We appreciate and approve of Cheryl and Dan and everyone's information, but you get seahorses that have been raised without experience with anything, and
they're
then what's
cheaper
going to
from me.
happen? Yeah, and they're cheaper from Vincent. All seahorses are great. It just depends on what you want. Again, risk tolerance level. Do you want just seahorses? Then this. If you want, a tank with a lot more than seahorses, then it's different.
But we will never have to worry. There'll never be enough breeders. But then at the same time, there's not enough people that want seahorses.
Right.
So
well, you gotta learn to ship,
it's
Vince.
a real small niche.
I wouldn't know what to do with them all. If I did have fry, like a lot, I wouldn't have places for them to go. I had a hard time rehoming the ones that I had.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what's
and I
hard
didn't
is
raise any.
there's other stores I could go to,
Mhm,
but I'm loyal to one store.
That's
mhm,
good,
And it's
though.
because they've always treated me good, and
mhm,
and I just can't. I can't do it. And then when I gave them to him, I put them on consignment for
mhm,
him to sell. But then
mhm,
people started calling me,
Yeah.
and they
mhm.
say, well, John said to call you, or you know.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I'd go in, then I'd call, and I'd say, do you need any more seahorses? Oh no, he said, I still have this 6.
Right.
He said, I
Because
just
he's
tell
having them
people to
call
go
you.
directly to you.
My
Right.
local store won't do the seahorses because they don't have the right setups. They
Well, I
can't,
wouldn't put them in
keep
a
them alive.
Petco or
But
something
they
like
keep my cards and flyers and stuff. And when people are interested in the seahorses, they send them to me. I had one store that I sold to that's not local to me. I had to drive the seahorses a few hours away, but they did okay there. He was able to sell them, and I gave him 4, and it
Mhm.
took him 3 weeks to sell them all, but they all made it into homes. But that was 4 seahorses took 3 weeks. And for
Yeah,
me to
but
drive them hours away, if I had 100 seahorses, I wouldn't have room to keep them,
right.
till I found homes for
But you
them.
would,
Or
but you just do a whole lot of work to keep up
Well,
with them.
no, I ran it.
yeah.
I ran into that exact problem where I finally got successful with breeding. So anybody out there, keeping seahorses a pair is not as difficult as anybody makes it sound. It's very easy. They're very hardy. If you want to breed, if you're interested in breeding, that's a different story, because once you become successful, then you have all these seahorses and nobody's going to buy them all at once, for sure. And it's hard because when you work with stores, you got to make, like most people, some people want to make sure that they're keeping the seahorses properly to sell them. So it's a difficult thing when you want to breed. That's a different topic. If you're wanting to just keep a pair, it's easy. But yeah, I experienced the same thing with having so many seahorses in my house that I couldn't keep up with them.
But I tell you
Had
what's
to
nice.
set up a 90-gallon. What was it?
What's nice is when someone comes and gets them, and you have extra money. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't
And-
make back what I spent on them, but it was.
Yeah, you never make
fun.
what you spend
It
on
was
them.
fun.
But no, what we really need to do is, as a community, is support breeders like Vincent and Holly and Alyssa and Dan.
I didn't
and
support Alyssa because without her,
right,
you know,
absolutely. And she learned from Dan. So without him, I mean, yeah, it's a big community. And bottom line is, we need to support the captive bred breeders that are doing all this work that I can't do. It's too much. I want babies again, but it's just for me. I just want to breed them again. I'm not looking to make a company. When
Well,
someone
that's what-
like
that's
Alyssa
what-
makes a company, or Vincent like is spending his time and energy and home doing this, we need to buy from them, because they're going to give you seahorses that are higher quality, captive bred, and will handle your tank better and can give you advice. You were going to say something, Vincent. Go ahead.
no, I mean it's. I mean, Alyssa's done a fantastic job, especially with what she offers, the coral, tank mates.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a tank mate person.
Right.
I don't.
Me either.
I don't put anything with the seahorses. And
Right.
at the store, they have a couple clownfish with them, small clown. Seahorses don't mind them. And but
I disagree with that one. I'm sorry, I do.
yeah,
I think
they
clownfish
just,
should not be with seahorse. Small clownfish, baby clownfish,
Yeah,
that
they're
looks
pretty small.
fine.
Well,
And
they're
it's
tiny and
pretty.
they'll only be there a short time, sounds like. So they're probably fine for.
Yeah.
Hopefully not sending that message, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really don't think clownfish should be with seahorses. My clownfish bite my fingers.
Well,
I can't
think a lot of
imagine.
things shouldn't. I see people
Yeah,
put
right.
emerald crabs, and to me, an emerald crab is risky,
Right.
especially for that little tail. And,
Look, I'm seahorses and
I
snails.
had emerald
That's it.
crabs with mine for a little while, for a couple years.
did
I
they
had
go after
emerald
the
crabs.
seahorses?
No,
No, I guess
I have
not.
a big hermit crab with my seahorses now, because he started out tiny. It came in a package. They were all supposed to be like blue-legged crabs, but one of them turned out to be, I think they call it a stripe-legged crab.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
He's big. He's big now. He's like this big.
I know, but I think the thing is, we can give the advice. We can
Yeah.
say, hey, here's the listing. These things work. Here's how you should set up. And it's the truth. And if someone else gets away with something else, it's because they have specific individual personality seahorses, or they have specific individual crabs. Maybe you have a nice crab, right? I mean, but if you get a mean one, we just don't want to give out the advice that, go ahead, put an anemone in your tank. It's all good, because no, right? I mean,
Yeah, if I saw
was-
bad behavior, I'd kick them out. But I honestly, I trained that crab with the turkey baster to leave Dandy's dish alone. Like if he went to try to eat with Dandy, which he used to try to do, I'd push him away and he'd crouch down in his little shell. And after a few
you
times,
trained him.
Yeah.
Oh, what I was going to say is I have 2 pairs of cardinal fish in my reef,
Sure.
always carrying eggs. Or
Really? Wow.
In their mouth.
Yep, in their mouth. Uh-huh.
And I thought, wow, I need to get those. And then I thought, cardinal fish, man, nobody's going to want those things. And they're so common. And see, I've had them in every tank my whole life.
Yeah.
And cardinal
I love
fish
them too.
was, is one of my favorite. The pajama cardinals.
Mhm.
There's something about them, and when you got 4 of them, they hang out together,
Yeah.
and it's, and it's just cool. That's the only cardinal fish I ever had. But I got it in my first tank, and every tank since then I've had cardinal fish.
But you
I
won't raise
thought
them because
about
nobody will
that.
I
buy
haven't
them,
raised
huh?
them because I don't think
Okay.
anybody will buy them. And and then what am I going to do with that many cardinal fish?
Well, we need to get you shipping, Vincent, because
Yeah, I
you'd be
know.
surprised. You'd be surprised how many people will buy them once you
Well,
have
I was thinking
quality.
I'd want to get oxygen.
Yep.
And so I was looking at, those ones that you go to Academy
Yep.
and little like that. Would those work?
I don't know.
They're supposed to be
Let me
oxygen
ask Dan.
O2. Yeah, I mean,
I'll tell you that when I'm not a professional, but I did breed and sell seahorses for a time, and I never had to use oxygen, but I was risking it.
I
And even
didn't. Yeah.
yeah, it's a risk. So if you want to go pro, you got to get the oxygen for sure.
yeah. Well, I
Let
mean, I would
me,
just feel better if one of them cans
yeah,
worked, because then you can get those for $15.
yep,
Just zap it with oxygen, put it in.
Mhm.
Yeah, I went and bought the boxes, and with the
Mhm.
styrofoam inside, heat packs, ice packs,
yep.
baggies, everything. And then I started looking at the prices, and it was
Well, and that's another thing people need to understand is that if you want
Mhm.
a quality seahorse and you want to buy captive bred and you want to buy from a breeder that's doing right by you and
Mhm.
providing quality seahorses, the shipping isn't their fault, right?
well,
I
even
mean,
even what
it's
I'm selling them for,
Mhm.
you're not going to get that deal
Mhm.
anywhere. I mean, you're just
right.
not going to get it. Even with the shipping, you're still coming out ahead. And
I'm
like I say,
buying.
Kelly's lining up.
I'm lining up, and
Somebody
I'll
told
let you
me
guys
the
know.
best place to get oxygen, I think, is where you get like welding tanks,
yeah.
welding
Then I have
supply.
all kinds of tanks for welding and different gases and stuff. And
Hmm.
but I just didn't feel like going to get a oxygen tank.
I
You know,
think you can even rent them. Somebody
yeah.
told me, like to use once in a while, like maybe rent one for a day while you're shipping or something.
Yeah. No, if I did that, I'd just keep it on hand.
Right. And the day that I get Dan in here, you need to come back, Vince, and I'll let you
All
know when
right.
it's going to happen so you guys can talk shipping because I mean, I can tell you what I know, but he knows much more. But I would
Yeah.
say Shyla's also said she doesn't know what she would do if her seahorse had fry because she's in Singapore. Can you
Oh
imagine
yeah.
trying to find buyers there? Oh my gosh. Yikes.
Well, it's a
But
lot of work, and
anyways,
when I do sell them, I ask people, do you want male, female?
hmm
And I said, some of them just want the same sex. Because I tell them, if
right.
you don't want to deal with the fry, I said,
Yeah.
I said, if you really get attached, it'll break your heart. You have to let them all
Yep.
die. I mean,
Yep.
it's just that.
Mhm.
I mean, it will. It just hurt, and
I remember crying next to a fry tank saying, please just eat. Please just eat,
Uh,
you beautiful little babies. Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
mhm.
yeah. Well, I've lost them. When they some of them when they were real little, wouldn't convert, and
Yeah.
I went tough love on them. I stopped the
What that's
brine
what you're
shrimp,
supposed to do.
and
Yeah.
Mhm.
stopped the brine shrimp. Some of them just didn't make it,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
but it's like I can't keep because I don't like baby brine shrimp in a regular tank. It
hmm
Mhm.
it comes
It
a point where,
pollutes.
yeah, it pollutes the tank.
But no,
Mhm.
what you're doing is amazing. I couldn't do it. I did it for a minute and I failed. So I'm gonna try to do it again, but we'll see. But you
Well, I,
guys, it is 10 o'clock. We've got much more to talk about with Vincent for sure. And be sure to check out his posts because his seahorses are amazing. I'll let you know when I get mine,
So
wink.
cute.
And we will continue this next week, of course. But I do have to cut it off. I have to work tomorrow, you guys. I'm sorry. But Vincent, I appreciate you so
Same
much
here.
for
well,
joining us.
I appreciate it. I had fun. I look forward to coming back. I'm
Yeah.
more comfortable
Nice.
tonight than I was the first time.
Well, we made you a guest. If you
Yeah.
can come back any week, and this is a note for anybody out there. Once you have the link, you can come back any week and just join us and chat.
And
It's
then
a community. That's what we're here.
I'll see you on Humblefish.
Yes, of
I'll
course.
be around.
I'm gonna do that right after we get off here.
All right.
All right.
I'm
So
gonna probably go and relax now. Okay.
go relax. I'm already too
Yeah.
relaxed. I had too much wine.
I,
Thank you
I
for
had
everybody who
water
came.
and coffee. All right. Good night.
I need to switch to water and coffee. All right, you guys. Happy Wine Wednesday. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers with me, Holly.